What does it look like when the music industry and social good interact? That's the question that I look at on this podcast. It's called It's Giving, and it's hosted by me, Ingela Travers-Hayward. This week, it's giving Alexis Krauss from the band Sleigh Bells. It was a real trip to get to talk to Alexis this week because back in my former life, I actually used to be a producer at MTV News Canada. RIP MTV News Canada. I don't think it's around anymore. But what was crazy is that back in 2010, when Sleigh Bells' album Treats came out, that was all I was listening to when I was at my desk working. And so to now be here some 16 years later, talking to Alexis about social good and advocacy and how she's woven that into her career, it was really enjoyable and also did make me feel somewhat old, but that is not Alexis's fault. That is just a product of time. But yeah, this conversation was really cool because Alexis has not only used her platform for social good, she's actually co-founded not one, but two community organizations. And let me tell you, as someone with her own nonprofit, that is not for the faint of heart. So I really hope you enjoy the episode. If it's your first time listening, go follow, subscribe. That support just means the world. And I've got a nice little collection of interviews that I'm growing. So go back and listen to the old episodes and let me know what you think and who you'd like to hear on upcoming episodes. Thank you so much. And here's Alexis. Alexis from Sleigh Bells, thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure. Really grateful to be here.
So, often with these conversations, I sort of start really broad and then get sort of tighter and tighter on the subject. But I think with you, you are a co-founder of not one, but two nonprofits. So I think I would love to just start by hearing a little bit about each of those, if you can sort of give context on what each of them are.
Sure. So I'll start with Kinship Climbing Collective, because I think without Kinship Climbing Collective, there would be no Rise Outside. And so Kinship Climbing Collective is not a 501c3, but it's a community organization that was founded by myself and two other women back in 2017. And we were all avid climbers. I was involved in climbing recreationally. Emily was a climbing coach. Eva was a climber and somebody who had really been involved in the kind of marketing and creative communication world of the gym climbing scene in New York City. And we were involved in some work that was connecting women in the climbing community with more experienced mentors, because there was a real gap in kind of female-led mentorship in rock climbing. And we wanted to create a space that was not just more diverse and more representative of women and queer climbers, but a space where women could really feel comfortable and vulnerable learning from other women. Climbing at that time was very white male dominated, and we just wanted to kind of explore some of those gender dynamics.
Yeah.
And after doing some work with adults, we started to play around with the idea of doing a work with young women, because we really felt that there was so much to learn. Climbing, like so many other sports, really teaches communication and team building and leadership and empowerment. And so a lot of these skills that we just thought would be really wonderful for young women to explore. So without going into all the fine print, we created some partnerships with New York City Public Schools, and we reached out to some great educators and schools that I had known already through my kind of community and outdoor work in the city. And we convinced this amazing group of mostly juniors and seniors in high school at that time to join us. And it just grew from there. We had kind of a core cohort, I'd say, of 6 or 7 students that just fell in love with climbing, and they fell in love with their mentors. And the reason why I say that Rise Outside kind of really grew out of Kinship is we decided that we wanted to take the primary curriculum of rock climbing in an indoor climbing gym and move it outside. So, actually where I live is about 2 hours north of New York City, and there's world-class rock climbing here that I had fallen in love with. So we wanted to get our kids outside, and not surprisingly, the leaders of climbing instruction uh, here in the Shawangunk Mountains, affectionately known as the Gunks, was very white and very male. Uh, and we had like over the years built this community of climbers, of young women, of genderqueer folks, of mentees and mentors that was so diverse. And it just felt not really aligned with our mission and values to then like take these folks climbing outside with white male guides. And to be clear, like we leaned on that guiding group for a long time and worked with some incredible men. Um, but we realized we were like, well, we've created this thing, this community in the gym, and now we have to create a community outside because no one's going to diversify guiding without providing the education and the resources and the investment to do so for folks who are looking to become guides. Um, the outdoor recreation professional guiding environment, whether it's in rock climbing or skiing or really any sport, has historically been very male. And so there were a lot of kind of barriers to break down. And obviously, like you're bringing young people rock climbing, like it's dangerous, like there are,
just a bit.
yeah, like, and there are, I mean, as somebody who runs a nonprofit, like I'm sure you can imagine, like, the complications of fundraising and creating a sustainable community organization is challenging. And then you add like the hazard of like rock climbing and young people and transportation and like, it was a lot to navigate. And so we basically were like, we have to sit down and do this work. So Rise Outside kind of came out of wanting to create an organization that both educated and guided and created community for folks in the outdoors that reflected the underrepresented communities that were being served. And so kind of through like wanting to create an organization that could host these programs that could speak about the land in less of a like we're conquering the land by rock climbing and more like we're honoring lands that have strong ancestral indigenous histories. We want to be caretakers of the land. We want to be stewards of the land. We want to engage in community. We want to address, you know, social, cultural, economic barriers to outdoor representation. We want to use pronouns in our circles. We want to like create a space where if you are dealing with, a heavy, a heavy, physical challenge or mental challenge, or you're on your cycle, or you're like feeling ashamed about your body, like whatever it is, right? Like we wanted to create a space for young people and really any marginalized community to feel safe outside and to see themselves in their guides, right? Like that was super important. So Rise Outside became a fully functioning 501c3. We are accredited by the American Mountain Guide Association now. We have a board of directors. Like we do the whole nonprofit thing.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. Yeah. And we're currently all volunteers because we had a budget challenge and our amazing executive director has still with our co-founding team, but is no longer salaried. So yeah, hence the just like insanity of running a nonprofit in 2026. But yeah, we're
not
we're
glamorous.
Doing it.
Yeah,
no, not glamorous at all. But yeah, that's those organizations for you.
So have you always been someone who, I think, there's a lot of people that care a lot about certain issues, right? There's not as big of a group that care deeply about a certain issue and wants to do something about it and then actively does something about it. Was it this in particular that you care deeply that drove you to be like, okay, it's not about just talking about this. It's not about just, acknowledging the issues or the gaps or the lack of diversity or this, that, or whatever. Have you always just been the kind of person that's like, no, let's actually do something instead of just talking about or recognizing the problem? Because yeah, it's not easy, actually starting these things up. So yeah. Have you been, is that who you are normally?
It's an interesting question. Like I do feel from a young age, I've had a strong sense of of duty to community, to serving and supporting others. And I particularly have a strong sense of wanting to support young people. I was a public school teacher in New York City. I worked with fourth graders. And when I stepped fully into the world of Sleigh Bells, we had like these 5 years of just whirlwind touring, constant travel, nonstop. And when I had a little space to like step away from touring and I discovered rock climbing and the outdoors, uh, in a way that like really reconnected me with a lot of the things I used to do when I was a young child. Like we didn't have the resources to go rock climbing or camping or hiking, but like I climbed trees and I ran around barefoot. And so that had always brought me immense joy. And when I was kind of reconnected with the outdoors through like my hikes with my dog and like um I was really missing working with kids, and climbing and the outdoors just kind of provided this like really obvious pathway for me that I could once again like focus on young people and focus on education and focus on creating opportunity for young people. Um, and I think like in a way I've like struggled with how to figure out how to do that in the music industry. Like it was just like there's so many great organizations that work with young people in the music industry, but a lot of them are like focused on production or focused on and just things that like I never personally felt like I can do this. Like I vocal coached young kids before, but like this was just I don't know, there was just an opportunity. And to your point, like yes, I often see that like if there's not a space being filled, I will often be the person to be like, let's do this thing. And I've had to set boundaries for myself because it can be very consuming. And I've also learned how to delegate. And I've also learned to be like, well, maybe you're not the best person to do this. Like there are other people to do the work. But yes, that was kind of the need to like work with young people again to do it while still maintaining a career as a full-time musician. And this just like these avenues just kind of opened up.
Did you ever feel like there was sort of a moment where music and social justice community work overlap? Like, do you remember if there was ever an instance sort of when you were starting out or during those 5 years, did those two things ever intersect in any kind of way?
Um, I mean, I think like for me, music is a part of my identity. It was my father's a musician. It's always been in my world. So there's never really been a separation. Like it's just always been like you're a musician and you're also all of these things. And um I think like the world that Derek and I have tried to create in our band is one that is, rooted in our partnership and our creativity, the kind of like intimacy of our band and touring family. Um, we obviously like when we go on tour, we're really mindful of the artists that we want to bring out and support and mentor. Um, but like back to my point, like I kind of struggled to like where is the hands-on work with young folks out there. I mean, music has this incredibly powerful transformative way of, you know, lifting people up, of helping them get through dark times, of building community. And in that, like when we're on tour, like that community feels a lot more tangible to me. It's like you have people in front of you, like you get to spend time with them after shows, you get to give people hugs and like listen to them and hear their stories. You get to maintain relationships with people on social media. Certainly if there are opportunities to play a show that benefits a certain cause or to just like hear from a fan and then kind of amplify the work that they're doing. And this is a great example of like connect with an organization that you're doing incredible work and then we can engage in conversation. Um, but I think at least, and this is just my experience in the world of music, it feels a little bit more fractured. And so like building community work, as is so much about showing up and it's so much about consistency and building trust. And like when you're sitting in a room with young people, like you can have a one-off thing where you visit a school and you do this and you play a show, but like mentorship and kind of that like weekly or monthly relationship building and program building, I found that through rock climbing and through the outdoors, and it's been harder for me to like find that through music, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, you know, I, I'm going to ask this, and I use hard in a, you'll see it's, within a context,
Sure.
is it ever difficult to be an artist that has a platform while also caring deeply about certain issues? Like, do you ever find yourself sort of struggling to, I think with you, you're so boots on the ground. And I think, yeah, you're interacting so directly with people. But yeah, is there like a pressure to feel like I should be doing something, I should be doing more, if that makes sense?
All the time. And it's hard to know if that where that pressure comes from. I think it's mostly self-imposed. I think I'm very hard on myself. I often feel deeply and I often feel overwhelmed by the world. And so I think, anybody who's empathic and, especially now as a mom, like I just everything hurts all the time.
Yeah, yeah, I
Um
get it. Yeah.
and and I do often feel confounded by my own seeming like inability to like really move the needle in different areas. um but I also know that like I've been really doing a lot of work to just tell myself like I'm doing enough. And obviously becoming a parent, like your capacity shift and your priorities shift. And in my work with Kinship, like I had to step away as like lead organizer for that. And thankfully, we were able to hand that organization off to this dedicated team of mentors. And, I still facilitate outdoor programming and I still connect when I can. But my capacity to give to others was diminished because I had to give to my child and I also had to give to myself. But yeah, I mean, I try and like root myself in community. It's like if I can't build the organization, I try and find the organizations that I can support. Like there's a amazing food collaborative that does work locally, that's working on food insecurity and that's helping folks navigate snap cuts and ice raids in the community, right? Like, and then there's obviously so much work being done at the community level to provide, things that communities need because they're not able to leave their house because of raids. And then obviously the world of international conflict is like even more overwhelming. So it's just like, um but yes, I often feel like guilt and shame for not doing enough. Um, and that's a big source of my anxiety, not to dive too deep into mental health, but
Oh no, I get it, because it's like,
mm,
I I think about, it's this strange pressure,
yeah,
it's like, well, you have this, we have much smaller in comparison, this, small platform. And so it's like, okay, we care deeply about all these awful things that are happening in the world. So let's talk about them. Let's talk about them.
yeah,
But is that helping? But if we don't talk about this, does that seem insincere, or like
right,
we don't care? And
right,
it's sort of this double-edged sword. I think, especially as musicians, you have this voice that a lot of people don't have, but that's also, it's not also the easiest thing to sort of have that at the same time, I think. And sort of
yeah,
how people navigate that's really, really interesting to me, because it's
right.
not easy.
Yeah, no, it's not easy. And I also think, social media is just such a wonderful tool for connection and outreach, but can be such an overwhelming tool. Like when we think about compassion fatigue, like it's just, sometimes I've been more disciplined with my social media use lately because I realized like that feeling of spiraling or just like I'm not doing enough or I don't know what to repost. Like this is terrible. This is terrible. Oh, this is great. This is great. Like finding that balance, of just like not just bumming everybody the fuck out um all the time. It's like and then prioritizing like, well,
It's-
what issue is more, worthy of attention and which it's complicated and it's messy. And so I think like always kind of stepping back to community, right? To like, who are the relationships that you can build in your life? And, I've supported a lot of people in the process of becoming a nonprofit, whether that's just, I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but like, just being like, hey, you have this idea, like this is how you want to manifest it. This is how you want to turn it into something. And I think the same could be said for, musicians who want to put their music into the world. Like it's if you believe in something, if you believe there is a space and there's a void, there's something that needs to be filled and you can bring life to that, like do it. Like I am a big fan of kind of restless sort of like ideating and just like do it. And if it only works for 2 years, like that's okay. Like that's not a failure. Um and I think we're seeing, there's a lot of people out there with that energy that see a need and they're trying to serve, they're trying to uplift, they're trying to create the space, they're trying to empower. And that's wonderful and that's needed. And it's like we're all doing what we can in a system that is, really fraught with so many systemic huge challenges. And so, yeah, I think it's good to feel the pressure, but I think if that pressure is having like a negative impact on your mental health, then like we need to ease up.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
be a little easier on ourselves, you know? Like, so Sleigh Bells has been around since the late aughts. Have you seen a shift at all in how musicians talk about the things that they care about? Like, do you find it's more prevalent now of a band will say, we stand for this, or we're trying to support this? Or have you always seen social justice sort of woven into how musicians operate?
Yeah, I always have. And like the artists that I love have always integrated that into their music. Like whether it's Kathleen Hanna or Rage Against the Machine, like whatever it is, right? Like there's obviously and obviously going way back before those bands. Um, I do think though that like the ubiquity of social media has changed things, right? Because the way that artists put out art and statements um, is fundamentally different. And I think now there's so much content and there's so many organizations to be aligned with, and there's so many kind of projects bubbling up all the time, whether it's a t-shirt campaign, you can take a photo of yourself wearing a t-shirt that's like fuck abortion bans or whatever it is, right? Like it's just a lot easier to share your thoughts and opinions with the world on a minute by minute basis. So I do think artists have more access to like amplifying their personal platforms now than ever before.
Do you think that if you're an artist today, you do have that responsibility to help in any way that you can?
I don't I personally don't feel comfortable speaking for other artists. Like I think
Yeah.
it's such a personal question and I I kind of have just as much respect for an artist who is like out there aligning themselves with causes, being really vocal, and an artist that chooses to just be much more private and hold those cards a little closer. Obviously, I am somebody who, cares deeply about human pain and suffering, and I care about justice and I care about community. And so when I see somebody using their platform to like amplify, you know, whether it's RFK or whatever, something that like
Oh boy.
doesn't, excuse me, like something that doesn't
It's a
align with
choice.
me, right? Like if I'm out of alignment with somebody, like I think it feels that much more just like, oh gosh, wait, really? Like you care about that? Like you're using your
Eek.
platform to talk about that of all the things. So like
Mhm.
I would be lying if I said that like I don't like lose kind of respect for people um when they use their voices to talk about things that are out of alignment with me individually. But I would never fault somebody uh, for not speaking up or speaking out without having a conversation with them first. Like I am very cautious of judging people based on their social media personalities, worlds. Like I just don't think that's necessarily a fair way uh, to pass judgment on folks. But and it's like they may be doing something much more valuable than sharing something publicly in their private life. And who am I to know what that is? So I think art is political. I think like we live in a world in which basic human rights are under threat. And, I certainly feel the need to uplift and to use my privilege to, amplify the situations of people who are, experiencing extreme state violence or marginalization or whatever it is. But I think that's a very personal choice. And I think it's very personal to the band and personal to the business, whatever it is.
I completely agree. I think like I spend so much time thinking about, yeah, the overlap between music, social good, and like even as a nonprofit, we obviously benefit from musicians talking about this, but I still at the end of the day like realize everyone's different, like
Right.
you can't fault someone for how they're choosing to move through the world. Maybe there's a band that decides to plus one a different organization every tour. That's great. If you don't hear about another band doing something, you can't fault them for everyone's just trying to do their best, And I
Yeah.
think that's what it is at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I think, sort of wrapping it up on everyone's trying to do their best. I think if someone's listening to this and they're like, I feel like shit every day, I really feel helpless. What do you, especially, you, because you do so much work in your community in upstate New York, what do you recommend that someone do if they want to try and give back in this teeny tiny way?
Ooh. Um, I am a fan of getting off your phone. Like I am a fan of that. I am a fan of like taking up physical space. And I think it's interesting because organizations need support in a lot of different ways, right? So that could look like supporting an organization by sitting in front of a computer and sending emails on their behalf, or like volunteering to provide support for their website, or it could look like managing their social media, right? So I don't want to like, but personally for me, like there is something really powerful about getting in a room with people and also like connecting with the people that you want to help or support or uplift or empower, right? And so like for me, like when I deliver food, when I deliver groceries, it's a really good way for me to understand what communities are actually going through in real time in the Hudson Valley. And I think in so many places, we have huge disparities in wealth. We have huge disparities in access to transportation and access to healthy food. And, a lot of people move through their lives relatively insulated from what other people are experiencing. And that's just the nature of like how we live and work. And, it's sometimes it's really hard to have an awareness unless you work, in a school system, or you work for public health, or you work at the community level. Like you just might not know. And so I think that's why the power of being involved in a community organization or volunteering for, your local food fridge or whatever it is, or donating supplies to a mutual aid organization. Like I think anything that actually brings you closer to the challenges that communities face is always really it pulls you in because you see the immediacy of what's going on. And so I would just encourage people to like, if you're interested in food security, if you're interested in uh, you know, if you're interested in outdoor education, if you're interested in uh, healthcare, like whatever it is, to just kind of like look at the organizations organizing in that space and like call people, like because that's the thing about community organizers, like people use like very concrete tools, right? Like people they talk, they text.
Analog.
Yeah, like it's you have to show up, right? Like that's the biggest thing about doing any type of work that's actually going to create change in communities. Like you have to fucking show up. And so I just think there's something really beautiful about like being in a room with people and doing that work kind of more immediately and directly and intimately, if that makes sense.
Okay, that's a perfect place to end, but I'm going to go rogue because there's one thing you
That's
said
fine.
that
Go ahead.
just I'm so curious about one thing. Does going on tour help, and like especially sort of within this country, right? Does going on a tour, does that help give you more perspective on what sort of this country is going through? Like if you go to, you're doing a show in Milwaukee, you're sort of seeing something that's happening in Milwaukee. You're going through Louisiana, you see something that's happening there. I don't know. Does going on tour sort of give you a different perspective on what's actually happening out in the world right now?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. I mean, when you're on tour, yes, like there's a few different things. Like when I'm on tour, one of my favorite things about being on tour is like getting out and exploring. And that used to be like I used to bring my bicycle on tour and I would ride around and then it was like having my dog on tour and it was like getting to the public parks, like getting to the spaces where like she could run and explore. And then now it's like bringing my toddler on tour, right? And it's like all about being out in community. So, yes, I mean, that's not the experience of every person on tour. There's a lot of people that like stay in the bus, stay in the venue. It just depends what you're into.
Yeah.
But for me, I see a lot of the towns, I see a lot of the cities. And I love it because to your point, like you see a lot of what's going on. I mean, there was, when we were playing Minneapolis last time, it was before ICE had just like, completely devastated so many communities there. Uh, but there was like a No Kings protest in Minneapolis that we went to. And it's just like, it's beautiful to see the ways in which other cities experience community. And now one of my favorite things to do with my son Wilder is like go check out libraries in other cities and go check out museums and splash parks and like places where you see a lot of parents and other caregivers for children like see what matters to them and see what matters to the children, whether it's a community garden or a free resource for whatever. So yeah, I love traveling this country, and I've had the privilege of doing it now for like over 15 years, and I do think that's why I feel like deeply connected. And then you have the community space, right? You have the show itself, and like there's no more powerful, like viscerally powerful space than like people coming together to share their love of music, and like you just see people at their best, like just in this state of just like catharsis and joy. And that is like the true responsibility that I feel. I guess if there was any like, kind of like community responsibility, social justice responsibility that I felt in Sleigh Bells, it would be like creating a community space for people to be authentically themselves and for people to feel welcome. Like we have no tolerance for any type of, harassment or anything that's going to make somebody feel unwelcome or uncomfortable at our shows. And I want our shows to be a space where, for any person to be authentically themselves. And that means respect and no hate and tolerance. And so like especially this past summer, that was really beautiful. Like there were certain cities where I felt that so deeply. Like we did a show in Asheville, North Carolina, and that city was still reeling from the storm. And so like you got this real, you could feel it in the room, like it was palpable that people were once again allowing themselves or had the time to like come out and celebrate and feel joy and just like listen to music because they had been so deep into rebuilding and navigating so much loss and navigating so much grief. And I love speaking about that with people and naming it. Like I think it's a rare opportunity now where sometimes we can all be so siloed into our own worlds and into our own phones to like the power of being in a room together, the power of sharing music together. And and in a way like it's sometimes it's nice just to like focus on music because everybody comes to a show for their own reason. And like it's sometimes nice just to let people like respond however they want, and not like gearing the conversation too much in one direction or the other, just like giving people the opportunity to just be. And that may look very different for people.
Well, and that's really important too. At the end of the day, like your music makes people feel better, and people really need that probably more than ever. So
Yeah.
I think that's just as important as the actual work. But okay, I will let you go. Thank you so much for doing this, Alexis. It really means the world. I mean, we could talk about this and the wacky world of working in nonprofits for ages. But yeah, thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.